Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today with Fenix Commerce and Shipware. The topic for today is going to be how to utilize shipping solutions to impact conversions. This is a really important topic, but before we jump in and get into the detail, we're going to kind of look at two sides of the equation, kind of what happens upstream and what happens in the middle and what the impact of that downstream as it relates to e-commerce. And so before we get started, what I'd like to do is go ahead and introduce us to the panelists today. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Greg Enru. I'm our Director of Partnerships and Channel Sales here at Shipware. I've spent the vast majority of my career in working with strategic partnerships, and Fenix Commerce is one of our valued partners. So really excited about the content and what we'll have to discuss today. And what I'd like to do is just pass it over and introduce Mike Shine and Olivia Reese. And so Mike, I'll just go from left to right. And if you don't mind, have a moment to introduce yourself, tell a little bit about your background, and we'll pass it over to Olivia after you, Mike.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. My name is Mike Shine. I'm a channel account manager for strategic partnerships at Shipware. Shipware is a performance-based, technology-driven consultancy firm of experts specializing in cost reduction and risk mitigation for shippers. So my primary focus is working with our partners and shippers to create and educate and deliver solutions that drive results in cost reduction and cost containment. And I bring over 10 years of experience in the logistics space with a primary focus working with high volume shippers, both in the international and domestic markets. Thank you, and I'll pass it over to Olivia.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia Reese. It's great to be here. I've worn many different hats in the e-commerce industry, got my start over at Magento prior to the Adobe acquisition, and have since continued to help retailers really put their best foot forward. And for the purpose of today's webinar, really looking forward to diving in deeper on how retailers can start to drive more conversion and really better their overall D2C customer experience.
Great, thank you, Olivia. Mike, I don't want to waste any time here. Let's get right into it. And I think what I'd like to start with is kind of a conversation starter. And that conversation starter is, how did we get here? I'd like to talk a little bit about the market, the industry, some of the challenges at a macro level, and have a conversation around. I hope to keep this somewhat conversational and dialogue. I'd like to have us interact in this sense. But the conversation starters, how did we get here? What are the drivers in the market? And with that, I think I'll start with you, Mike. This is there's a lot of information in this slide, and there's we talked about the carrier duopoly and inability to benchmark. You have a lot of information, but even above that, if you don't mind, Mike, I'd love for you to color this in, share some of your perspective and insights of how we've gotten here to this point today, and part of this discussion. So let me hand it over to you, Mike. We'll start with you, and then we'll pass it over to you, Olivia.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Yeah, so there are several market challenges shipping products today. It's extremely competitive, right? So really the question is, how can shippers get their products to their customers effectively with the market challenges we're faced with? The landscape has become much harder. I'm going to touch on some marketing challenges shippers are up against today. And it's more challenging than ever before, right? There's a carrier duopoly. So FedEx implements an increase, a peak surcharge, a fuel surcharge, then UPS follows suit. They both operate in lockstep multiple times throughout the year. It isn't just in January when you get the general rate increase, right? It's being aware and knowing how the increase will affect your bottom line. It's really critical. For example, last month, FedEx raised fuel 1.75%. UPS, what did they do a week later? They followed with 1.75% increase. So rates continue to increase. The carriers are holding all the cards. It's the inability to benchmark your rates. Do you have the best negotiated rates possible? How do you know if that's accurate, right? There are 250 data points in any UPS FedEx agreement. And how, as a shipper, do I know if my rates are as optimized and as best as they can be against the competition? Your rep may say, yes, your rates are the best. We've gotten you all the concessions we can, but where's the data to back that up and confirm that? Experts such as Shipware have come from FedEx and UPS and have really reviewed thousands and thousands of contracts and know all the levers to pull and where the hidden excess margin is. It's also the Amazon effect, right? We're all guilty of it, me, myself included. Everybody wants free shipping. They want it fast and they want it cheap. Amazon has really set the stage for this. Expectation is you never have to pay for shipping. But in fact, with Amazon, we are paying for a yearly fee to use their platform, but it just seems totally free. So customers, they don't want to pay for shipping. It makes it difficult as a shipper. So how are you going to strategize and work this through your logistics profile? How can you figure out a strategy to get it there fast and at a minimal cost so you can increase your conversions and minimize what we're talking about, and that's cart abandonment. And then it's the demand exceeds supply. As we all know, COVID has impacted buying habits. It's dramatically changed the landscape. Volume has increased across the board. And with those volume increases come shipping challenges, come surcharges, slower transits, capacity constraints. The pandemic has showed increase in volumes. UPS and FedEx, e-commerce growth is exceeding 5 to 7 year projections, and it's just going to continue to increase. So the question is, what other options are out there in addition to FedEx and UPS? And some of the strategies are mitigating risk of not being single source is really critical in today's market. There's consolidators, there's regional carriers. You can do zone skipping. Where are your majority of your customers located throughout the country and internationally? So being really open to alternatives can be a significant game changer and can reduce costs and improve service levels. Shippers are all trying to figure out how to get the fastest, lowest cost possible options at checkout. And the ones with the most competitive costs at checkout, they're the ones that are seeing the increases in 17% on their conversions. So how do you put your best foot forward? How do you be more competitive? You lean on the experts that can help.
Thank you, Mike. Gosh, that's amazing information and things I think we're all familiar with. And really what you're talking about as a whole is everything you discussed is kind of upstream. And so I want to kind of take this back down to the merchant. And that's really the topic of today is how do we reduce abandonment rates and increase conversions in the shopping cart. And we're going to start to dial in on that a little bit. But as you think about that, there's some really interesting statistics. So we have this slide. If you wouldn't mind coloring this in, this is some research that was done across roughly 4,300 respondents of reasons why cart abandonment happens. And let me turn it over to you, Mike and Olivia. I'd love to have you color this in and share some of your thoughts. Maybe start with, go ahead and start with you, Mike, and share your thoughts on this slide. I think it's an interesting and compelling slide when I look at the just how broad and wide at 49%. That just strikes me.
Yeah, and how do shippers mitigate this ever challenging competitive market today of cart abandonment, right? So that the challenge is you get to the end in the checkout cart and the shipping costs are too high. The customer abandons the cart and the conversion decrease. They move to a competitor's site. If that competitor has free shipping or minimal shipping costs, that's typically the one that gets the conversion. So there are strategies to mitigate shopping cart abandonment. For one, it's benchmarking your current contract. So cost reduction and cost containment for your shipping profile. See where you sit in the market against competition. Is my FedEx or UPS contract fully optimized? 9 out of 10 times, we find it isn't. There's excess margin you're leaving on the table. Are the areas to button up and improve that will help drive more conversion, separate yourself from your competition? The e-commerce market, it's flooded with merchants, right? So are you going to be the one that separates yourself? What are you going to do as a pass-through? Will you offer free shipping? Do a flat rate? Increase your product margins to cover shipping? The carriers are holding all the weight, but there are ways to mitigate that. We're also seeing that the big thing in the market right now is diversifying your risk and exploring other options. So in the past, shippers could work with one carrier to maximize the relationship and leverage their pricing. It's a totally different landscape today. In today's environment, access to alternative carriers is critical. It's more challenging than ever. And there are other options. There's postal consolidators, there's regional carriers, You could look at zone skipping solutions. Are you shipping ground economy, etc.? Where are your most customers based throughout the US internationally? It's not just a UPS and FedEx game out there. So mitigating your risk and not being single sourced is critical in today's market. And having an open mind can really be impactful and be a game changer that can reduce costs and then also improve your service and transit times.
Mike, I think just from what you described there, again, that's really why it's so important to look upstream and make sure you're containing your shipping costs, but also opportunities to reduce, and as you said, mitigate risk and not be single threaded and just be open in that sense. But then as you kind of dial in and you get to the point of execution where you're in that experience, that really, Olivia, I'd love to get your kind of thoughts and feedback on that.
Yes, absolutely. Echoing some of what you shared, Mike, the last 2 years, have brought very fast and, big changes to the way that consumers buy and receive goods online. And so retailers really need to start to embrace that disruption and meet the needs of the modern consumer, right? The modern consumer is ready to abandon cart and jump ship to a retailer who provides delivery transparency. So especially in the age of Amazon Prime, right? That Amazon effect is so true. You're absolutely right. Consumers want fast, free, transparent delivery. And if they don't get it, they'll go elsewhere.
Yeah, great point. And just to kind of drill in on that a little bit, Olivia, I think this, if you wouldn't mind, this kind of is getting right to the crux of what you're starting to dive into at that experience and decrease cart abandonment and provide exceptional customer experience. And this is really where I know your platform and organization shines, but I'd love to get your thoughts and kind of color in this slide a little bit. There's what I think are some interesting kind of data points that you call out on this slide. You mind coloring that in a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. So I think it's safe to assume that everyone on this call participates in online shopping. So we can all empathize with the woman on the left in this slide. It is deeply frustrating to complete a purchase and then be left in the dark about its arrival. Or the flip side of that coin is being anxious and unsure about making the purchase altogether because the delivery expectation is unclear. And these frustrations from a customer experience perspective have a huge impact on business. A lot of reasons retailers pour marketing dollars into driving traffic. They do this through advertisements, but unfortunately, those dollars essentially get sort of flushed down the toilet, if you will, if the website traffic is not converting, right? Website traffic is not valuable if shoppers are not converting. So this is a huge challenge for both the consumer and the retailer to really provide that experience consumers look for, while also, ensuring that traffic and marketing dollars are well spent in order to turn one-time shoppers into lifelong fans.
Yeah, great points. And it kind of takes me back to that 49%. There's a number of things listed in there: shipping, taxes, other fees. The number one reason people abandon, which that impacts your conversions. And merchants, they're in the business to try to drive sell and conversions and grow their business that way. So I think we both do some things uniquely different, from Mike and your perspective, looking upstream and addressing the shipping, all the variables and the complications in the shipping side, making sure that merchants are right-sized, if you will, in that sense. That will have a downstream effect all the way down, even post-transaction, from a delivery and to the doorstep capability. But then there's that spot in the middle, and I've got another slide here. It's kind of a conversation starter to take us to the next topic I really want to get into. So we touched a little bit on how do we get into this space, and I think we've done a good job of explaining just the patterns and behaviors, COVID, Amazon effect, all the things that, many of these things we kind of had on the radar maybe 5 years out, they are right now. And so, merchants and shippers are feeling this right now. So what can we do about it? And what I'd like to do is maybe start with you, Olivia. I think this is a really compelling to just kind of walk us through and color us in on the information on this slide, and kind of talk about that point of transaction, because this is where the rubber meets the road in many ways.
Yes, absolutely. What can we do about it, Greg? There's actually a lot we can do about it, thankfully. So, in order for retailers to really scale their D2C sites and grow their business, first and foremost, they need to address the pre-purchase customer experience. And as we, discussed, the data supports that cart abandonment is on the rise. It's growing and growing. And when retailers display delivery dates early in the shopping experience, everybody wins. Consumers are motivated to move to the checkout, and they're motivated to complete the purchase, and of course, more likely to convert. And with that, retailers can continue to scale, continue to thrive in the age of Amazon Prime. And so that pre-purchase transparency really sets off quite a domino effect for both the retailer and the consumer, again, where everybody wins, because in the age of 3 to 5 business days, forget it. That's not a message consumers want to see. And the data supports that they will go elsewhere if that delivery date is cryptic or vague or confusing in any way.
I think that's a really important point, because we tend to focus on the shipping cost, but equally important is the delivery and the expectations and setting those expectations. I think this is really compelling to be able to present that proactively at that point of checkout. Certainly having a reduced cost and being competitive, when you think of the Amazon or effect, and this expectation of free shipping or nearly free shipping in many cases, that's one side of the equation, but your ability to kind of predict and give options as far as when you want to receive it. There's probably nothing worse for a buyer to be on a site, go through the process, and then find out that, well, they're not going to see that product for 7 to 10 days delivery. It would have been nice on the front end to have seen that proactive, so you could make that decision. Maybe you pay a little extra to have a faster delivery. What I think is interesting about this is having this type of capability now allows all merchants to level the playing field. They can be kind of micro Amazons, if you will, in their own kind of omni-channel e-commerce type of approach. So I think this is a really compelling story, and it kind of touches on both sides. Upstream, reducing and containing those shipping costs, that can factor into your price models and how you structure all of that from and then the different benefits and programs you might offer at the point of checkout. This is a really compelling slide, and Mike, did you have anything else to share on that?
I'm pretty much in agreement on that. I didn't really have any additionally to share on that.
Yeah. Well, so just kind of moving on, I'm trying to keep my eye on the clock. I know we're trying to condense a lot into a short amount of time. So I wanted to, I think this is just dive in a little bit deeper, Olivia. And I know this is an area that you're very well versed in, and help color us in on this, what we have on our screen here a little bit today.
Yes, absolutely. So on the topic of customer experience, we addressed the pre-purchase sort of need to be transparent, to be upfront. And really, this is just as important in the post-purchase experience as well. So really driving that transparency home. Once the shopper has converted to customer, we're only halfway there, right? So it's really about making that post-purchase experience. And what I mean by that is the time between once an order is placed and the moment that order arrives on their doorstep. making that time not only engaging for the customer in terms of a custom curated brand aesthetic, but providing that transparency that they saw at the beginning of their pre-purchase experience. That continued reassurance through live real-time updates, through email, through SMS, that really communicate every step of the journey up until the moment that order arrives. And of course, this has a profoundly positive effect on customer experience. But for the retailer themselves, this also dramatically reduces those pesky "where is my order" inquiries that either come through via phone or email. That can be really overwhelming, especially if a customer is frustrated or angry. Setting up that post-purchase experience to be strong, clear, and communicative really reduces that need to touch base with the retailer. And again, everybody wins. So really, again, driving that transparency home and continuing that through the entire customer experience with the retailer.
So important. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that post-purchase experience is so important. So it's really everything beginning all the way to the top upstream. Then you kind of come into the point of transaction, that post-transaction, and providing that visibility in that journey. And then even behind the scenes of that, to be able to have your finger on the pulse of your carriers and their ability to deliver, and making sure that you have the right carrier mix so that you're not missing some of those SLAs and expectations that you're putting in front of that customer. But even if those things, if there's delays, to be able to proactively be in lockstep with the buyer, the person that's purchasing off the site, and have that transparency and visibility, it's so important from a customer service perspective. And no doubt that experience converts to repeat buyers. So really exciting stuff. I know we had a condensed timeline today. This is really what we wanted to cover for today, but we have a couple other things we'll wrap up. Thank you so much, Mike and Olivia. Before I kind of move on to a couple other kind of closing slides I want to wrap up with, I'd like to give both of you an opportunity to kind of share any closing thoughts or comments you might want to share, and then we'll share a couple of upcoming events and activities that we want to leave our audience with today.
Yeah. As a retailer today, as we all know, it's extremely difficult. But as we did mention, there are ways to mitigate that. It's making yourself more competitive. It's leaning on experts such as Shipware and Fenix that can help you through that journey to decrease those cart abandonment issues, increase conversions. So there is help out there, and it is getting more competitive. This is the most challenging landscape we've seen. So we're here to help, and I'll pass it over to you, Olivia.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of the common D2C challenges, there are solutions to address them. And so absolutely, Fenix, consider us a resource and a tool to really help D2C brands scale. Again, in the age of Amazon and the age of increased choice and competition, echoing what I shared earlier, is that brands really need to meet these heightened demands of the modern consumer, and really ensure that the CX is where it needs to be in order to get those conversions up, create memorable experiences, and of course, from that shipping perspective, cut costs and really be mindful about operations as a whole. So there's a lot about Fenix and Shipware that we didn't get a chance to get into, but hopefully this gives you a high level idea of where this could, be a fit or a help. So our door is always open to continue that conversation, should it be of interest.
Well, thank you, Olivia, and thank you, Mike. And I think you're right. I kind of see this maybe a little bit as a primer to, maybe we'll have a follow-up and take a deeper dive in some of these other areas. We're really just scratching the surface. But Mike, you mentioned something, and it'll kind of be a good segue to the next slide. We can help, and Shipware and Fenix have both offered a couple options that can help. You might want to be able to make available to our attendees today. And I'll go ahead and let Olivia, if you want to share a little bit about your free shipping audit and then I'll turn that over to Mike and talk about the free benchmarking shipping analysis.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if there's an interest to kind of explore from a shipping perspective, I know today's call was more focused on CX, but really that's the enhanced customer experience is really the icing on the cake of the Fenix platform. We really are, I consider our backbone and our pillar to be around this ability to streamline shipping operations from a cost center more into a profit center, getting really granular about carrier and service that's being selected. And so, that if that operation can be cleaned up and really streamlined, everything else falls into place really beautifully. So if there's any interest, yeah, happy to schedule some time and share how we can shed some light on this as an opportunity. Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you, Olivia. And Mike, tell us about the free benchmarking shipping analysis. That sounds interesting.
Yep. Yeah. So if anything we talked about today on today's call does sound interesting and you're curious, we can do a free complimentary analysis of your shipping profile. Our team of experts at Shipware directly come from the carriers. We have all the insider knowledge, all the things carriers don't want you to know. We can give you a benchmarking score, see where you sit in the market, and see what areas there are to improve, so we can increase those conversions and lower that shopping cart abandonment. So you would just simply go to www.shipware.com, go to the book a demo and put your info and details in. But we really appreciate it.
Thank you again. And before we close it out, I'm just going to take a quick peek at the chat and the Q&A, see if there's anything that may have popped in there by chance while we've been discussing. I think we kind of covered everything. Again, today was intended to be kind of a quick and short kind of primer to provoke some thought, get you thinking about how to be more competitive in the market as a merchant and increase those conversions and reduce those abandonment rates. And we've got two great partners here that work very closely together. And thank you again for your time and participation today.
It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Greg, Mike, as always. And yeah, take care, everyone. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Olivia.